Good afternoon, everybody. Forgive me for the lighting issues. I'm hoping that you guys can all hear me, see me. It's good to to be getting started with some live YouTube content. This is the first time that we've ever gone live, actually. As you know, each week we put out videos about mental health, psychology, content for the general public, content for psychology students, and anybody who's interested in the stuff that we do. And we do that every single week. But going live is the first time, we've never done that before. This is the first time we've done it. I'll be honest with you, I was pretty nervous. Pretty nervous about kicking off with live content. Usually when I do my recorded content, it's all pretty much structured. It's scripted to some degree. I have a little bit of an idea of what I'm about to say. This time I have a bit of a script again, but it's, I don't have the opportunity to edit my content or edit the videos. So who knows what I'm going to come out with. But today we're going to be taking a look at managing mental health during a lockdown. And I thought this was a good time to start having a little bit more of this conversation, because as we're starting to come towards the lockdown where measures are starting to get lifted a little bit and parts of lockdown are starting to be eased, I thought, it would be really important if we still had that discussion about mental health, if we still had that discussion of mental well-being, because it could be really easy to forget it. So hopefully a little bit of a discussion around how to manage that mental health with you, but more just kind of to help me out. Q&A throughout this, you can ask me any question you want. There's a little kind of text box in the corner there. You can ask me any questions at any point. It can be about the topic that we're looking at today. It can be about other topics. Absolutely fine with that. But what we're going to do is we're going to kick in, and there's a couple of things that I want to get across first. First of all, I want today to kind of just be as like an opportunity for adding as much value as I possibly can to you guys, to ensuring that we're getting as much of an understanding about managing mental health throughout our time with coronavirus and throughout the lockdown. And I think the first thing that we probably want to ask is, why is now so different? Well, today is different for this time is different for a number of different reasons. The uncertainty or the unpredictability of the circumstances that we're living in really does fuel anxiety, and it really does fuel low mood. It really does fuel challenges with mental health, and I'm sure that you can understand that. I know personally, I've been experiencing elements of anxiety and other challenges with mental health. It's been challenging. It's been really difficult. We've been going through a lot. When we see things like empty shelves in supermarkets and things like that, or we see people wearing face masks even, it's one of the issues that I've been having recently is that the face mask idea, has been implemented by governmental standards and legislation for good reason, but there was also a little bit of, we'll just add this piece in just in case. We'll just add face masks in. And I think we've got to be very cautious of when we do that, because we could start getting the lines between physical well-being, mental well-being a little bit crossed, because I don't think we're really appreciating just what it's like to see tons of people with face masks on all of a sudden. I kind of think can be scary for people. That can have real impact on people's mental health. Yes, of course, they're necessary if the science backs it, but we also got to balance that. We've got to make sure that we're considering our mental health as well. So these are really challenging times, and I think as well, when it comes to like work and studies, even like working online and studying online, having fuller autonomy over our own work and studies, people having uncertainty over graduation or uncertainty over the length of time it will take them to finish their studies, or the length of time that it will take them to finish certain projects at work. Normally they're involved in a kind of team environment. Now they're individualized, they're working on their own at home. That's challenging for many people. I also think there's something about, considering when exactly am I going to finish my work, or when am I going to finish my studies? I think, again, that's really difficult to grasp. I'm kind of interested to know what you guys think of this as well. What kind of mental health difficulties or what kind of things have you experienced when you've been going through lockdown, or you've been going through this coronavirus or this situation? Because I think that's really important for us to have a discussion about that and actually say, you're not the only one. I've experienced that. I'm sure other people will experience that. Let me know in the comments section in here if you guys have been experiencing challenges in mental health. I know that I have. So please, let us know. Let us know your own experiences as well. There's a number of different ways in which coronavirus has impacted us. It's not just on a physical health level. I think there's something about the unpredictability of the situation, the lack of ability to see family and friends as well. I know for me, that's a big thing. I'm very close to family members and things like that and friends, and not having the opportunity to meet them or see them has been one of the biggest issues for me. You know, I kind of, I'm stuck in a house at times more often than not, of course, on lockdown, and only being able to exercise every now and again is limiting. You know, I want to see people. I want to see people that I love and I care about. Not being able to see them is difficult. I also think, you know, people who maybe live alone, you know, experiencing that level of loneliness or isolation, and also something that I talk a lot about on GetPsyched in different videos is that lack of routine and schedule. And if we can implement a routine and a schedule, that kind of thing can be very beneficial for our mental health. And actually, when I was publicizing going live today, I wanted to implement a few kind of practical steps for people. And one of those key practical steps is about actually managing and implementing a new routine and a new schedule. And if you can section out your day, if you can silo your day into different hour slots or 2 hour slots or 4 hour slots, and actually construct what it is that you want to achieve in that day, that's going to be a huge benefit, or that's going to bring huge benefits to your mental health. That feeling and sense of, you know, everyday productivity, getting jobs done that you want to get done, that kind of thing can be really, really beneficial. So actually, if you can start structuring your day still, I know we're kind of coming towards the end of those really kind of strict periods of lockdown, but if you can continue to add routine and schedule into your everyday life, that kind of thing is going to be really, really beneficial. So that's something to think about. And it's a really easy thing to do as well. You know, siloing out your day and structuring it can be a really straightforward thing to do. I think there's also something about one of the challenges that at least I've experienced from as a mental health practitioner is that this virus is, of course, very physical health orientated. And that's, of course, expected. You would be surprised to suggest otherwise. It would be surprising to suggest otherwise. This is a physical health thing. It's a virus. It's going to cause physical illness. It's going to cause physical difficulties. And as a result, if we are experiencing challenges with our mental health, we might feel a little segregated. We might feel like, you know, I don't know if I really want to discuss my mental health difficulties because there's so many people dying. There's people that are being infected by this virus. And we need to manage that, you know, and it's not appropriate for me to talk about my low mood or my anxiety. And so that can be a real challenge as well. So I don't think we can underestimate that. The fact that this is a physical health focus on this virus can make it really difficult for people who are experiencing mental health difficulties. There's also something that I've used with clients before, which I call a worry chain. You might actually be able to access this kind of content online on some kind of CBT materials. It's called a worry chain. And what happens is when we have to manage our worry and our anxiety, particularly in situations like this. And one of the best ways to help manage and understand and curtail our worry and our anxiety is by understanding it a little bit better. And we can do that via a worry chain. You know, for example, a worry chain is kind of like thinking about how our worry builds. So for example, you might, you know, your first worry might be, you know, I've got a headache. And then the next one might be, gosh, you know, what if it's coronavirus? Next one would be, you know, what if I pass it to somebody? Next one might be, what if they pass it to more people? So you can start to see how this worry chain starts to really increase. And often that happens with people with high anxiety, with depression as well, and even people with obsessive compulsive disorder. These kind of worry chains can really grow astronomically, and they can become something that they were never meant to be intended for in the first place. Worry is important. We're meant to worry about certain things. But when we start worrying in extreme circumstances, or we allow that worry chain to grow and grow and grow, then we can start to have some difficulties. So actually, one of the things I do with many clients is draw that worry chain out. And again, when we're thinking a little bit about practical steps on how to manage that anxiety or manage mental health during lockdown, developing a better understanding of how your anxiety or how your mental health is impacted can be really beneficial. So what you could do is you could just grab a pen, you could draw out a worry chain. So it could be different links, and you could think about what's the kind of my go-to worry? What's the kind of thing that I worry about most? Or, you know, and how does that build? And often, you know, many of us have these really extensive worries that kind of almost seem like they've come out of nowhere, but they've got a worry chain behind them. So actually doing that can be really beneficial. And we can start to see, well, hold on, you know, this worry is coming from something really small, just like a basic headache. You know, that could be many different things. That doesn't necessarily mean it's coronavirus. It doesn't have to be coronavirus just because I've got a headache. So you can think on those lines. Like I say, with many clients, I've said this before and GetPsyched as well, one of the biggest interventions we can have on any problem that we face, any mental health difficulty that we face, is a better understanding of it. It's not necessarily a behavioral exercise. It's not necessarily a cognitive exercise. It's a better appreciation of the problem that we're facing and why we're facing that. And actually, a worry chain could be a really beneficial way to do that. We can develop an understanding of how our worry perpetuates. So I would encourage people to take a look at that. I think we also need to understand and address our worry. And when you know, again, I do this with many clients, and I've actually done this kind of thing on GetPsyched before. video, particularly in the challenges that we're facing currently, thinking a little bit about our worry and actually how we manage our worry with the coronavirus, or you've experienced mental health difficulties as a result of coronavirus, you'll kind of know where I'm coming from with this. Worry can be on a really advanced gradient scale. We can have normal worry and we can have excessive worry. Normal worry might be like, I need to get more food in the house. I only have enough for the next few days. That kind of worry is expected. That's acceptable. Because if we don't have that level of worry, then we're going to starve. And we need to get that food. And we know that part of governmental legislation is that we can go out to get food. That's okay to do that. So being concerned about the fact that we don't have enough is appropriate. However, we can go into that kind of red zone, as I like to call it, of excessive worry. And some of those worries might be, what happens if I don't, for example, if somebody's in university, what happens if I don't graduate soon and I can't get a job? And there's so many different variations of that kind of worry. But that's an excessive worry because we can't control what happens with that right now. There's nothing that we can do in this moment to help manage that. We can do some certain pieces of work in the moment, and we can do our assignments and make sure we're on top of those kind of things. But ultimately, we can't predict what's going to happen with graduation if you're a university student. Now, that's just an example, but it's a pretty effective example of excessive worry. And the thing with normal worry and excessive worry is that normal worry helps you get what you need. That's what normal worry does. Excessive worry leaves you feeling more devastated or demoralized, and that's a fact. We need to think a little bit about how much are we worrying, because that worry leads to anxiety. How much are we worrying about certain things that are excessive that we can't control in this time of lockdown? And how much are we worrying about normal things that we can control, things that we can do, things that we need to worry about, and that we can have a direct impact on? Again, I want to kind of hark on about this again. A better understanding of the problem that we're facing is going to be one of the solutions to this, guys. So think a little bit on that worry scale. I often, with clients and worksheets and things like that, I often draw out a scale and think, right, what kind of normal worries are you having? What kind of acceptable, understandable worries that you're having that are helping you get what you need? What are those? Because those are good. We need those, so long as they're not being excessive. But what are the excessive worries going on for you? What are the things that you're worried about that you can't control right now? Or what are the things that you're worrying about that are so far ahead, that are so predictable, that are leaving you more demoralized? And is it effective to really invest in those worries? Those are the kind of things that we need to do. And I encourage you to do that. Again, those are really helpful practical steps on helping manage our mental health during this time of lockdown. We also kind of need to understand a little bit about what mental health or mental illness is. And part of mental health and mental health difficulties is anxiety. Many of us are going to be experiencing anxiety during lockdown. You might feel anxiety over contracting the virus. You may feel anxiety over losing your job. You may feel anxiety over the fact that you're not around family members, or there's new things going on. Right now I'm about to have a baby, and family members are going to struggle to see that baby. That's challenging. That causes a great deal of anxiety for me. That's the way it is right now. I have to learn how to manage that. And again, we need to understand how anxiety perpetuates. And anxiety fundamentally is all about the intolerance of uncertainty. If we have an uncertain situation, and you don't need to look too far for that, of course, coronavirus lockdown is an uncertain situation. If we have that level of uncertainty, however tolerant we can be of that situation is going to determine how anxious we feel. So, for example, if you can tolerate that uncertain situation, if you can tolerate the uncertainty of coronavirus and lockdown, your anxiety is going to improve. It's going to go down. However, if you cannot tolerate uncertainty, if you have that uncertain situation and that tolerance is low, the anxiety is going to go through the roof. Fundamentally, all that's happening is that we have that common thread of the uncertain situation. That's what we have, and we can't do anything about that right now. So the question then remains, what can we do? Well, we can either tolerate it or we can't tolerate it. And if we can't tolerate it, the anxiety is going to reduce. If we can, it's going to improve. I know that sounds really easy, but many times I often feel that anxiety is almost like a magnet. If you were to put a magnet in this room right now, like a massive magnet, everything that was metal would be attracted to it. It would leave all the plastic stuff, all the fabric, all the wood, everything else. It would be left. The magnet would attract everything that makes it stronger. And I often think that's the case with anxiety, is that it attracts more and more evidence. And maybe this is applicable for you. Now, I know it's applicable for me. When I feel anxious about things, I often try and find more evidence to support my anxiety, to support the fact that I should feel anxious. And I think that's really important to consider here. It's really important to think about how much does your anxiety drive more anxiety? And being able to tolerate levels of uncertainty, being able to understand your anxiety better are some really key practical steps on being able to manage it and managing your overall mental health during times like coronavirus when things are uncertain. There's a number of different management tools as well that I think are really important that we take a look at. And one of those things that we do, or at least I do in therapy, I use a number of different forms of therapy in my counseling psychology work and other things, is called acceptance and commitment therapy. Now, actually, I feel that acceptance and commitment therapy, or what we would call ACT, is a really effective form of treatment for anxiety. Because what ACT says is that sometimes what we can do, particularly in therapy, is that we can shine too much of a light on our anxiety. Or we encourage ourselves to lock it in a cage, to lock it up, to repress our anxiety. And when we start to feel anxiety or anxious situations, we use distraction techniques and we use kind of other methods to ensure that we don't feel anxious. And ACT says, actually, that can be one of the most detrimental things that we can do to that anxiety. In order for us to overcome the level of anxiety, or for us to be able to appreciate it better, deal with it better, we need to learn to accept it. In situations like this, one of the best ways for us to learn to accept our anxiety is to recognize that it's okay to feel anxious. It's absolutely appropriate that we feel anxious. If we didn't feel anxious, there would be something kind of wrong with us, and actually the anxiety is a kind of useful thing. I think often what happens is that we feel anxiety and we think, oh no, anxiety's here, I need to get rid of this, I need to get over this. When actually we need anxiety to some degree. If you and I were to hear gunshots, or if you were to hear gunshots outside your house, you should feel anxious. That's normal, that's expected, that's important, that's necessary. Anxiety in a situation like that helps inform you how to protect yourself and those around you. So if we didn't have anxiety, we would be at great risk. And often I see clients I see many clients with anxiety, and they say, I want to get rid of my anxiety. I don't want to feel my anxiety anymore. I want to lose it. I don't want to ever feel anxious again. And I can totally empathize with that. I can totally understand that. If you're feeling that high level of anxiety, of course you don't want that anymore, but you need a level of it in order to function effectively, in order to protect yourself. We need that level of anxiety. And so we need to know that anxiety is okay. So that's the acceptance part of acceptance and commitment therapy, being able to allow ourselves to experience the anxiety and say, it's okay to feel like this. The other part is that commitment phase, committing to things that we can change, committing to different parts of our lives, or committing to routines, committing to sleep schedules, committing to exercise, or to what we eat and what we do, when we relax. When we're kind of doing maybe some meditative practices, which is another big part of ACT, we can commit to those kind of changes. For example, we can't change what government legislation is going to say for us to do. We can't do that. We can commit to what our work routine is going to be like over the next week, or who we're going to FaceTime maybe on WhatsApp or Facebook or something like that, who we're going to connect with on social media, or within our social circles perhaps, or like in a Zoom quiz or something like that. We can commit to those kind of things, and those are positive changes. So there's the acceptance part and there's the commitment part, and I think those two sections are really, really important when we're trying to overcome or manage our mental health during coronavirus. But these kind of things are difficult to do at home. Don't get me wrong, I recognize that. I understand that these kind of things are difficult to do at home. So how do we do that? Well, we need to have a subjective understanding of our own anxiety and our own worry and our own mental health, and we need to make appropriate changes where we can. We can utilize things like meditation and mindfulness and being present. We can understand the element of control, something we're going to look at in a minute. We can manage our routines, something we've talked about. And we can maintain levels of connections. And that's another thing that we're going to discuss. That mindfulness and those meditative practices are really, really effective. And often I discuss them with clients. Guys, if you've also got some questions about some of the practical steps that we're talking about, then make sure to comment. If you utilize some meditative or mindfulness steps, and let me know. Because they can be very helpful, particularly in times like this. So let me know in the comment section if you guys have any kind of experiences with this. One of the things that I use, or one of the kind of practical steps that I use, and I actually mentioned this on my Instagram, the GETPSYCHED Instagram recently, was it's called the Eye of the Storm meditative technique. And actually it's a very effective technique for particularly when things are feeling out of control, or circumstances are feeling out of control, just like coronavirus, or just like lockdown. And basically all it is it requires you to take about 5 to 10 minutes to sit, close your eyes, utilize some deep breathing techniques. I often say, breathing in for 3 and breathing out for 6, allowing your mind to empty, but envisaging yourself sitting within the eye of a storm. Those kind of The Day After Tomorrow movies, where you see that massive hurricane and you've got that eye of the storm, and it is very, very peaceful, and everything around you is kind of chaotic. Well, this can be really helpful if you kind of envisage yourself sitting in the middle of that and watching all of this kind of chaos and far distance going around you as you're extremely peaceful and calm within the eye of that storm, and utilizing that metaphor, that imagery metaphor, with those breathing techniques for about 5-10 minutes can be really helpful. We start to kind of ingrain this process of managing calmness, of managing relaxation, of managing peace in the face of situations that are very challenging. There's so many other meditative and mindfulness practices, guys, that you can utilize, and I encourage you to have a look at them. There's plenty online as well, and we talk a little bit about them on GetPsyched as well, but I really like the Eye of the Storm one. I think that's a really effective one. You can try that out, let me know what you think. I also do some this is where I can't say this word, diaphragmatical breathing, so from your diaphragm. Now, often the Eye of the Storm technique can be utilized, I think, very effectively in times when situations feel out of control, or when that anxiety is really far through the roof in the moment. The diaphragmatical breathing, I feel, is something that you utilize every day as a kind of routine. And I've been doing this quite a bit, and it's really helped with that level of anxiety and management of mental health difficulties in spite of the situations that we're facing. And what it requires is for you to lie on a hard surface, put a pillow behind your head, a pillow underneath your knees, and putting like a book or your hand on your kind of diaphragm, just kind of here, and allowing your hand to raise and sink as you breathe. Now, counting in again for 4, maybe 4, counting out for 6 as you breathe out, and using your diaphragm to breathe that, allowing your mind to empty. These kind of processes of mindfulness, of meditative practices, of breathing practices can be incredibly effective. So maybe utilizing that every morning or every evening or both could be very effective. You're starting to ingrain a little bit more of those relaxation processes. And in times when anxiety is high and mental health is difficult, we need to utilize these kind of practices in order to allow our body to get used to the fact that it's okay to switch off now and again. Diaphragmatical breathing can be a really effective way of doing that. I also think, and one of the things that I've been doing myself and I do with others, is understanding that level of control. We talked a little bit about that just a minute ago, about that, understanding control and implementing control where we can is very important when we're trying to overcome levels of anxiety. Often what happens is we try and control situations that we can't control. And we talked about coronavirus, we talked about lockdown. You can't control those things. You can't control government legislation. You can't control what other people are doing. So actually controlling the things that you can control can be a very effective way of managing that anxiety or managing those mental health difficulties. Simply writing out a table of a situation. So for example, lockdown. Okay, we're using that a lot. So lockdown, that's the situation. What is it about lockdown that you can't control? Well, you can't control what the government does legislation-wise. You can't control what this virus is doing, so to speak, on an objective level. You can't. You can't control what other people do. What you can control, though, writing that in a second column about this situation, lockdown, what things can you control? Well, you can ensure that you're going out for that walk. That's part of that governmental legislation, and many governments are implementing more exercise, so you can take advantage of that. You can, FaceTime friends and family members. You can do so many different kind of things to integrate with other people. Yes, of course, it's not the same, but utilizing elements of control where you can get that control is really important. Den, I see your comment. Thank you so much for the first comment, buddy. It's always a pleasure. Den is the CEO, creator, founder extraordinaire of PsychReg, who are a very close affiliated company to GetPsyched. So pleasure having you here, Den. Thanks. Say hi to Graham as well. So yeah, those kind of measures are really important. And thinking a little bit about those levels of control can be very helpful. There's also something, and I use this, and I know this sounds weird. I know that what I'm going to say here is going to sound kind of strange, but sensory meditation can be very helpful. Sensory meditation basically brings us into the here and now. And I think it was Confucius that said, anxiety is all about looking ahead. It's all about looking in the future and getting worried about the future. Depression is all about kind of looking in the past and being concerned and worried about what has happened. We need to be more present. We need to bring ourselves into the present moment more. And we can do that through sensory meditative techniques. Now, a sensory meditative technique, or a good one, can be the 5 senses. So thinking a little bit about, or rather what we would do in therapy is, in the moment, if you're feeling super anxious, listing 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. Now, I know that sounds like a kind of strange technique, But that sensory meditative technique can be very, very helpful to allow ourselves to become more present in the moment and allow ourselves to let go of much of that anxiety. So I really encourage people, I know it sounds weird, give it a go. You don't need to tell people that you're doing it, but it can be effective. It can be really effective. It's helping you bring you into the moment. You know, you're thinking about what's around you, what you can feel, what's going on for you. You know, a lot of sensory meditative practices can be done simply by like cooking or having a meal, thinking about all the different textures and flavors and the heat and all these kind of things can be very, very helpful when we're utilizing sensory meditative techniques, and they can be really effective when we're managing anxiety. So make sure to give that a go. For me, guys, I think managing mental health comes down to 3 key components. Managing mental health in coronavirus or during lockdown comes down to 3 key components: achievement, pleasure, and connection. And I think we have to have all of those in order to ensure that we're managing our mental health during these really difficult times. That level of achievement, I don't mean productivity as such, guys. That's one of the things that I've had a bit of an issue with recently, and I know many people have had, is that, you know, we're expected now to be super productive because we've got more time. We're living through the pandemic of a century. We're living through unprecedented circumstances. I know that's an overused term, but it's true. So please don't feel like you have to beat yourself up if you're not utilizing your spare time super productively, because people are going through really trying circumstances. People are experiencing the death of loved ones, the loss of jobs, distance and isolation from other loved ones and people that they care about. That's really difficult. When I say achievement, what that could be is utilizing maybe some more meditative practices that we've talked about today, implementing them into your routine. That can be seen as an achievement. You know, for other people, it might be learning to work a little bit better from home. That could be an achievement too. Whatever's applicable for you, you need to have that sense of achievement on a daily basis, I feel, in order to help manage that mental health. The second pillar is pleasure. Doing something that you enjoy. You know, if it's cooking a meal for yourself, if it's reading a book, if it's having a bath, something like that, that gives you a level of pleasure. Ensure that you're doing that every day, something that you enjoy. It could be a workout from home. Ensuring that you're doing something that gives you pleasure can be the second pillar of ensuring mental well-being during these difficult times. And the third pillar is connection. Now, of course, we don't have that same level of connection to those that we care about or those that we love as often as we would like right now. Of course, we don't, but we can use certain measures. And I know it's not the same thing. And I know it can feel second best, but FaceTiming, calling, texting, Zoom quizzes, whatever, you know, Zoom meetings, anything, whatever it is, connecting with other people is that third key pillar, I think, to ensure that we're managing that level of mental health during these really difficult times. So keep in mind those 3 pillars: achievement, pleasure, and connection. I think those are really, really important. When we're experiencing some of these kind of mental health difficulties, we need to ensure that we're thinking a little bit about our environment as well. I'm going to kind of finish on this point here. To think a little bit about the environment that we're in. You're sleeping, you're eating, you're socializing, and you're working within, you know, the confines of your house. And that's really important because we need to ensure that we're managing our environment. You know, there was a study recently that I read that was talking a little bit about how a cluttered environment or cluttered working environment can lead to further distractions in work if you're working from home. So, you know, managing your environment, managing the context around you can be really, really important when we're actually trying to manage that level of mental health. So take a little bit of a consideration about the place in which you're working, about your home, making sure that it's reasonably neat and tidy. I know, you know, I'm not the best for that, but ensuring that you're keeping in mind your environment that you're in as well. Guys, today we've been taking a look at managing mental health during the coronavirus. I really appreciate you guys, those of you that tuned in, that listened to some of the points that we're talking about today. I think this is such an important time to be thinking about mental health. It's Mental Health Awareness Week as well, and so I thought we'd go live for the very first time. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. I was reminiscing a little bit about 3 years ago when I first started GETPSYCHED, and the video quality, you can actually check the videos out, the very, very first videos. If you go to oldest videos, you'll see the video quality and the stuff that goes on there is not ideal. And I'm sure live, you know, the GETPSYCHED live stuff will happen again and it'll improve and things will get better. It's always the process. But I've really, really enjoyed this today, guys. I've been meaning to do this for a while. And I hope, fundamentally, ultimately, I hope you guys have got the most amount of value from today. Thank you so much again for tuning in, guys. Make sure to be thinking a little bit about managing that level of mental health. Make sure to be thinking about your mental health, your anxiety, your low mood, whatever happens. It's okay to feel like that. Thinking about the people around you as well. If you've enjoyed today, guys, make sure to, you can give me a shout out on Twitter. I'll get back to you. Same with Instagram. And you can check out some more recent videos that we've done as well on managing mental health during coronavirus, actually on the GETPSYCHED YouTube channel. There's plenty of content there. Guys, once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and who knows, we'll maybe do a live sometime soon. Thanks again, guys.